the SEC, where a surging 7-1 Missouri team will travel to Athens to take on a still undefeated Georgia Bulldogs squad, sitting at 8-0 on the season. Georgia's a 15.5-point favorite here, over under 56.5. Missouri is coming up situationally decent spot for Missouri, coming off a bye. Georgia's off of that Florida game, but obviously this is a really tough place to play. That Georgia team seems to be finding its stride and knows when to turn it on. And, this is a huge game in the SEC. I mean, Missouri, they win out, probably going to the college football playoff, depending on what happens with other teams.
You got some of that 300-1 on them to win the national title? I had some questions about this. Like, no, I don't think we're going to do that.
I did not. But people maybe not have seen Missouri play this year. I mean, maybe they saw them against LSU. They did give up 49. They took care of business against Kentucky, South Carolina. They even beat Kansas State on the 62-yard field goal at the end. They struggled early in the year, but just to give people a quick high-level overview of Missouri, if you're not too familiar, offense is very good with Brady Cook. Early in the season, they weren't really throwing it downfield. I think that just had to do with quality competition. They since have, and the offense has really benefited. Theo Weiss and Mookie Cooper are really nice compliments for Luther Burden, who's one of the best wide receivers in the country. The offensive line is all pretty good in pass blocking, except for right guard Cam Johnson. But they're still struggling to get a consistent rushing attack, which I think could hurt them here. They're going to have to go to the air, right? Like, I don't think they're going to get much on the ground against Georgia. And then they have a death row defense. That's what they call it. They have really good corners in Rakestraw, who's now back. He missed a couple games. Drain and Norwood. Good linebackers on paper in Hopper and Chad Bailey, who's one of the best in the SEC. But Chad Bailey, I think, is going to be out for this game. And that's big. He's one of their best pass rushers from the linebacker spot. And they're very good against the run, one gap scheme, very disciplined one gap scheme. Like, you can't really run much on them, and their linebackers clean up a lot, but they don't get a ton of pressure naturally, and their safeties are bad. So they give up because they're not getting pressure and your safeties are bad, even though your corners are good and can cover, it leaves you vulnerable to explosive plays, which has been a major issue for the Missouri defense. So without Bailey, he might play. I don't think he is. It's a big loss. You got to generate some pressure and then create some chaos. Otherwise, this defense, even though I like the corners, they just can't hold up because the safety play has been so bad. And the linebackers aren't great in coverage either. So that's a quick summary on Missouri. I'm pretty close to market here. So I don't have anything, but I think you do. What do you see here?
I feel like a broken record. I think this is the third or fourth week in a row I'm taking it over in a Georgia game. I mean, to me, it's so clear cut with this. And I'll start with the side of Missouri since you started there. Like, you remember it was like 6 weeks ago, we were like, what is this Kirby Moore offense? Like, are they holding things out? Because it was such a...
Yeah, they just weren't throwing downfield at all.
They weren't throwing downfield, and they had all the weapons in the world. But now we've seen those weapons, and you mentioned Luther Burden. He's the best slot in the nation. The number 2 slot in the nation used to be the guy who used to play that for them, who's now playing for Georgia. But when you look at Brady Cook, he's effective throwing in 10, 11, 12 personnel. He's got 20 big-time throws to 7 turnover-worthy plays. Luther Burden being the biggest threat in the slot. Teams can attack Georgia on the ground, not through the air. So I got a little bit worried. I wanted to take Missouri at 18.5, 17.5, because I power rate this thing around 2 touchdowns, but I just couldn't do it because of some of the things you mentioned. But once I looked at what Georgia does on defense, they run quarters, they run cover 3. Both of those are the highest success rate in EPA that Brady Cook has had all season. At least 20% of snaps against quarters and cover 3 have been explosives for Missouri this year. Georgia's 5th in coverage grading, and they're 10th in on-target allowed. So that's really Missouri's going to be able to get it downfield. They're going to be able to get themselves into scoring position and get points up. But I think it's going to be critical about what they do in the red zone against this defense, whether they can cover. So I didn't even want to mess with the cover. They're going to get their points. Go to the other side. Carson Beck is getting better week after week. I mean, I'm not trying to scare you into thinking you're going to have to eat a shoe. I'll mail you one that's real nice, old and leathery and, tastes terrible. But Carson Beck is getting better. He loves to throw against cover 1 and cover 3. He has a better EPA versus cover 1 and cover 3. His big play rate is 26%. That's huge. Missouri is 76th in coverage. You named it. They are leaky in defense. They are leaky in scoring opportunities. They're 69th in quality drives. Teams are getting down the field. They're 99th in finishing drives. Teams are finishing up with points, usually over 4 points per trip. So the biggest handicap in this game is the slots. Luther Burden versus former Missouri Tiger Dominic Lovett, who has taken over all those short crossers and slants that has left for the Brock Bowers is not a part of anymore. Now, Tyke Smith is going to draw Luther Burden when it comes to Missouri on offense. That's good on good. It's definitely a battle to watch. But Dylan Carnell drawing Dominic Lovett, Carnell has been targeted 43 times. He's allowed 29 catches playing slot corner, 8.2 per when he's been targeted. So it's not a good matchup for Missouri on defense whatsoever. So both offenses are going to have problems establishing the rush. They're both going to be above success rate and EPA when they're throwing the ball. I love the over here. I took it at 54.5. It zoomed through 55 this morning. I put it in the 60s. I put it at 61. So go ahead. 59 is the next key number, but Georgia tried to cover the total all by themselves last week. Carson Beck just has too many advantages and explosives here with Dominic Lovett in the slot. So over all the way here. I think Georgia, the spread is probably a toss-up. I might stay away from it.
Yeah, I think both teams are going to go pass heavy here. I mean, I think Missouri, the only fear would be is if Missouri tries to ugly it up like their previous matchup with Georgia. But I think that would be very, very, a very, very stupid approach because their weapons are on the outside. Their running game hasn't been there.
Yep.
And so I think there's going to be a lot of just pass heavy attacks. And that Georgia knows how you attack this Missouri team is through the air. So that would certainly favor the over.